When you think of the WWE, what comes to mind? Probably sold-out stadiums, larger-than-life superstars, billion-dollar TV deals, right? But what if I told you the blueprint for all of that wasn't sketched out in some corporate boardroom? What if it was pieced together over centuries of pure American showmanship? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the secret history of how the WWE was really forged. And, believe it or not, our story starts right here, with this. This is a cestus. It's a pretty nasty piece of work, a leather glove, sometimes wrapped with iron plates, worn by Roman gladiators. It was designed for one thing: brutal, bloody spectacle. And this ancient weapon, well, it's actually the first clue to understanding the very DNA of modern pro wrestling.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What on earth could Roman gladiators possibly have to do with the WWE? The answer, and this might surprise you, is everything. It all comes down to the fundamental, unchanging human desire for a show, for combat as entertainment. To connect those dots, we're going to walk through 5 key chapters. We'll start with that ancient blueprint for spectacle, then we'll meet the forgotten genius who basically invented modern wrestling. After that, we'll trace the McMahon family's deep roots in the fight game, see how TV changed everything, and finally, we'll get to the hostile takeover that started an all-out war for the soul of the industry. Okay, first up, from gladiators to showmen. See, before the McMahons could even dream of building a wrestling empire, the very idea of a combat show had to be perfected. And that took a long, long time.
The ancient Romans, they had a phrase for it: bread and circuses. They figured out early on that public spectacle, especially combat, was an incredibly powerful tool. It speaks to this primal urge we all have to watch a contest, to see a story of conflict play out right in front of us. And that idea, it's the bedrock for everything that comes next.
So now, let's jump forward a couple thousand years to the late 1800s, right here in America. Guys like Dan Stewart took that Roman concept and gave it this uniquely American, almost Wild West-style twist. They created these traveling boxing carnivals. They were part circus, part fight night, and they brought the spectacle of combat to the masses. And this sketch, it just perfectly captures what those events were like. They were huge, they were chaotic, and they were driven by nothing but pure showmanship. You had to be a promoter, a publicist, and a logistics whiz all rolled into one. This was the wild, freewheeling environment that created the template for all modern fight promotion.
And that brings us to the guy who took that template and applied it directly to wrestling. His name was Joseph Toots Mondt, and he is without a doubt one of the most important and most forgotten figures in the history of this entire business.
Now, to really get Mondt's genius, you have to understand what wrestling was like before him. Honestly, it was kind of a drag to watch. It was this slow, grinding, technical style that could go on for hours with no end in sight. It was a total niche product, stuck in these small, smoky halls.
So Mondt just blew the whole thing up. First, he created what he called slam-bang Western-style wrestling. He injected speed and boxing and brawling to make it a show from bell to bell. Second, he added time limits. It sounds so simple, but it was revolutionary. It created urgency and drama. And third, he took wrestling out of the back rooms and put it in the biggest arenas in the country. He made it feel important.
But here's the tragic part of his story. For all his innovation, for all his genius, Toots Mondt had a crippling gambling addiction. His partners got tired of it, they got tired of the problems, and they eventually muscled him right out of the company he helped create. The man who literally laid the foundation for modern wrestling, he died completely broke.
So with Mondt's exciting new product ready to go, the final piece of the puzzle just falls right into place: the McMahon family. And listen, they didn't come into wrestling as outsiders. No way. They were already masters of the fight game.
This timeline just lays it all out so perfectly. It's a 3-generation story. It kicks off with Jess, the patriarch, who brilliantly teams up with Toots Mondt. Then his son, Vince Sr., takes that partnership and turns it into a regional powerhouse. And then, finally, the grandson, Vince Jr., buys the whole operation and sets his sights on nothing less than total global domination. Now, what's so fascinating here is that the McMahon family's expertise was not just in wrestling. Jess McMahon was a major boxing promoter in New York. He worked with the legendary Jack Johnson. He even owned black baseball teams. The guy was a savvy, entrepreneurial sports promoter, through and through. Wrestling was just another golden opportunity he was smart enough to seize.
All right, this brings us to the second generation, Vince McMahon Sr. So he inherits his father's business smarts and Toots Mont's incredible product, and he uses a brand new technology to build an absolute empire, television.
To give you a real sense of his success, you have to remember that at the time, wrestling was this patchwork of different regional territories, all governed by the National Wrestling Alliance, or NWA. Well, Vince Sr.'s company became so powerful in the Northeast that it controlled roughly 70% of all booking decisions for the entire NWA. They weren't just a player, they basically were the game.
And this was his genius. You see, while other promoters were terrified of putting their product on TV for free, they thought it would kill ticket sales, Vince Sr. saw it for what it really was, the greatest advertisement imaginable. He just knew his show was so good that TV would only make people want to see it live even more. He was right.
But, when you have that much power, friction is inevitable. The CWC started to feel held back by the NWA's rules. So in 1963, after a big dispute over their champion, they staged a full-on rebellion. They just pulled right out, renamed themselves the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and crowned their own world champion. It was a massive, massive power play.
So as Vince Sr. is building this powerful federation, one that's based on a system of gentlemen's agreements and respecting territories, his son, Vince Jr., he's watching all of it. And he's coming up with a much, much more aggressive plan for the future.
This slide just lays out the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got Vince Sr., the old-school builder who respected the system. On the other, you've got Vince Jr., the young disruptor who saw that exact same system as a barrier to national expansion. Where the father honored boundaries, the son saw them as targets to be destroyed. This wasn't just a business disagreement, it was a fundamental clash of worldviews.
The absolute turning point comes in 1982. This is the year Vince Jr. buys the company from his own father. The keys to the kingdom were just handed to a revolutionary. And it wasn't just a sale, it was a declaration of war on the entire industry. And he wasted absolutely no time. Vince Jr. immediately started invading other promoters' territories, a rule his father held sacred. He started buying up their TV time slots and poaching all their top talent. The infamous Black Saturday incident in Georgia was a crystal clear signal to everyone. The old ways were dead. The wrestling wars had begun. So in the end, you have this incredible three-act family drama. The grandfather, Jess, lays the groundwork in the world of promotion. The father, Vince Sr., builds a powerful, respected kingdom on that foundation. But the grandson's ambition was just so massive, so revolutionary, that he realized he had to shatter that very kingdom in order to build his global empire. And that leaves us with this final thought. From the bloodlust of the Roman Colosseum to the high drama of WrestleMania, the goal has always been to put on the greatest show on earth. But it really makes you wonder, can a dynasty ever truly reach its full potential without first having to destroy the very thing that made it great in the first place?